All right, let's get some reaction now to these developments. Congressman Brian Mast is a Republican from Florida and a member of the House Foreign Affairs Committee. He is also a former Army combat veteran who was awarded the Bronze Star and served alongside the Israel Defense Forces as a volunteer. Congressman, great to see you.
Good to see you also.
So how concerned are you about these ongoing attacks between Israel and Hezbollah?
It's highly concerning, right? And we know that Iran has, let's say, at least 100,000 rockets aimed at Israel from the north. That's highly concerning. We see this strike that took place. This wasn't just targeting Hania. This was targeting Hania directly in an IRGC housing complex. So that brings Iran into it in a slightly different way. And then, of course, everything that we see going on, ongoing in Gaza as well. But I do step back from it and I take a look at it in this way, just from a strategy viewpoint. I'm always of the mindset that attacks come from a buildup of weakness and peace comes through an abundance of strength. And so if this is Israel showing strength in the face of this, I think ultimately it leads us closer to a peace deal.
So the U.S. is sending more military resources as well to the Middle East, including a air carrier strike group. What is the U.S., in your view, preparing for?
They're going into the region, but it's a tough situation in this way. You look at the background of this, you take a general like General McKenzie, our former CENTCOM commander under the Biden administration, and he has been very clear since retirement that this administration took Iran off the table as a target. He literally called it aid and comfort to the enemy. And so you have to wonder what deterrence does sending those groups into the Med, what does that actually do for Iran? Do they fear our offense, or are they thinking we're just there in a defensive front? I think that's the calculation that they're making right now about American military presence.
After the killing of the Hamas leader last week, do you have any hope left for a negotiated ceasefire and return of hostages being held in Gaza?
I do. So as I said again, I think an abundance of strength leads us closer to peace. And so I think you look at two separate groups going on in this fight. For the fighter on the ground, I think they see these attacks and those fighters want to go back and fight more and attack more. Those that are Palestinians or Iranians or in Lebanon or anywhere, I think they want to fight more. But I think for the leadership of Iran, of Hezbollah, of Hamas, they see those attacks. They know that if they were a part of October 7, they are on the table as a target, and it makes them want to step closer to the negotiating table.
Do you think the Israeli Prime Minister is fully committed to finding an agreement that would bring hostages home?
I think he's committed to finding the right agreement. The right agreement has not been presented. When an agreement is offered to say, hey, let's have a phased approach towards giving back hostages, giving back the bodies, laying down the weapons of the October 7 attackers, that's not the right approach to this. Netanyahu's been called an arsonist for the region. I think that's the exact opposite of what he is. I think he's more the firefighter and not the arsonist. When he shows strength, again, I think it brings us closer to peace, to let those leaders know, especially what was the former prime minister of the Palestinians and now the Hamas leader. That shows just how entrenched Hamas is into the whole social system of Palestinians, that when you take that person out, it shows, hey, this is the commitment of Israel. If you were a part of October 7, prepare to meet your maker, unless we reach the right conclusion, as you were just asking about, which has to be total return, total lay down of the weapons.
I also want to ask you about the prisoner exchange the U.S. had with Russia last week. It brought home Wall Street Journal reporter Evan Gershkovich, also Paul Whelan, among others. Here's what former President Trump said about the deal at a rally last night.
I'd like to congratulate Vladimir Putin for having made yet another great deal. Did you see the deal we made? Now, look, we want to get people in. We got 59 hostages. I never paid anything. They released some of the greatest killers anywhere in the world, some of the most evil killers they got, and we got our people back. But, boy, we make some horrible, horrible deals, and it's nice to say we got them back, but does that set a bad precedent?
So what are your thoughts? Do you think this was a victory for Vladimir Putin, or was this a victory for the hostages or those who were the Americans who were detained and their families for their release?
I think it was President Trump struck the appropriate accord for the families, for the hostages, absolute victory, and for Americans. We're glad that they're back home on American soil. But even Jake Sullivan said this was an unbalanced deal. We took back people that were wrongfully detained, and we released individuals that were very justifiably detained. It was unbalanced, and President Trump, knowing him well, he wants us to get back to making deals that are unbalanced, but in the favor of the United States of America. We're going to get the better end of the deal, and we're just going to have it to be unbalanced in the other direction. That's what making America great again is all about. Let's have the world be tilted to the American advantage.
All right, let's talk about what's happening in Florida right now, or potentially. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis is set to give a storm update the next hour. You've got Tropical Storm Debbie, which is threatening to be and gain hurricane strength, threatening parts of Florida. What are your thoughts on preparedness for Florida right now?
Floridians are very good at preparing for hurricanes. We know the process well, whether it's putting up shutters, whether it's stockpiling our water supplies, boarding up windows, getting out of the way of the storm if that's what has to take place, moving off the coast and moving inland to a hotel or friends or family or somewhere else. Floridas have been through this process again and again and again. And so I think Floridians will take heed of the warnings of the governor, of which the governor's office does a very good job of making sure to get the announcements out, getting the tracks down, making people aware of where these storms are likely to hit. And in the end, those that pay attention to these warnings will be in the right places.
All right, all the best for all of Florida. Congressman Brian Mast, thanks for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, still